Let me get straight to it. My wife and I got hitched when we were both 25, and now here we are, 38 years old. We first met back in college, fell for each other, tied the knot, and life seemed like it couldn't get much better. We both graduated, landed good jobs, and started building a life together. She worked for her dad's small business while I was grinding away at a big corporation. Then, out of the blue, my boss quit, and since I was the only one who really had a handle on running the department, I got a fat raise, better bonuses, and some sweet benefits. By the time I turned 28, I was pulling in 3 times as much as my wife. That same year, our first daughter came into the world, and 2 years later, we had another one. Thanks to her gig with her dad, my wife had more wiggle room with her schedule. About 5 years ago, we hit a rough patch when her dad passed away unexpectedly. That left my wife and her mom in a tough spot, trying to decide if they should sell the business or take the reins themselves. Her mom didn't have a clue about running it, so my wife stepped up to the plate. To my surprise, she managed to grow the business just like her dad had done. And with that success came a big pay raise. She ended up making more than I was. I couldn't help but feel proud, watching her go from just an employee to running the whole operation. It was no small feat, but as her career took off, our daughters started to feel the weight of us not being around as much. That's when my wife and I sat down to talk about one of us staying home. She suggested I quit my job since her company really needed her. I agreed, and just like that, I became a full-time stay-at-home dad. I handled everything, looking after the girls, cooking, cleaning, fixing things around the house, running errands, you name it, I took care of it. When my wife got home from work, I made sure she was pampered and didn't have to lift a finger. Everything seemed to be running smoothly until about a year ago, when her attitude started to shift. She began throwing out hurtful comments like, "Do you even do anything? And why don't you get a real job?" That hit hard. I had poured everything into making our home life easy and peaceful for her after her long days. Yeah, I used to have a solid job, but I chose to give that up for our family, for my daughters and for her. My wife always liked being close, but recently she'd stopped initiating anything. And when I'd ask for intimacy, she was always too tired or not in the mood, which felt strange. I figured she was just overwhelmed with work and everything else going on, especially with the pandemic. So I kept trying to lift her spirits, but no matter what I did, it never seemed to make a difference. Last weekend, we went to watch our oldest daughter's softball game. I wanted to record some video to send to my folks since they live out of state and rarely get to see their grandkids. I left my phone at home, so I asked my wife if I could borrow hers. She had been glued to her phone all day, so I thought maybe it was a good chance for her to take a break from it. She handed it over and went off to grab a drink and a snack while I filmed our daughter. As I was recording, a notification popped up from one of her apps. Curiosity got the better of me, so I checked it out. What I saw knocked the wind right out of me. There was this guy from her work, younger than me by about 8 years, and they had been sending each other explicit texts, videos, and pictures. They were talking about how close they'd gotten, and he was straight up insulting me, calling me a wimp for not being able to handle my woman. To make matters worse, my wife was agreeing with him. I felt like the ground had been ripped right out from under me. I was devastated, furious, and shocked all at once. When I heard her coming back, I quickly closed the app and switched back to recording the game. On the way home, she tried to make small talk, but honestly, I wasn't in the mood to chat. Later that night, we went to bed, and for the first time in a long while, she tried to get close. But I had to tell her I just wasn't feeling it. That's when she hit me with, "If you're going to be all moody, fine, go sleep on the couch." So I got up, and I've been sleeping on the couch ever since. I'm completely lost right now. I don't even know how to wrap my head around all of this. My wife has always been everything to me, and my daughters, they're my whole world. As for what I've done so far, first, I've saved all the messages, pictures, and videos as evidence. Second, I don't own any part of the business. It's split evenly between my wife and her mom. And third, I can't bring myself to sleep in the same bed as her anymore, so I've been staying in the guest room, and that's where I plan to stay for the time being. Now, about my decision, I made up my mind. I'm going to divorce her. This morning, I contacted a law firm in a nearby town to keep things on the down low. Fortunately, the law firm had a last-minute opening, so after dropping off my girls, I hurried over. Long story short, the lawyer I met with was really sharp. I laid out all the evidence, and he assured me it would heavily work in my favor during the divorce. Since I had quit my job to raise our daughters while my wife was rarely home, and now she's wrapped up in an affair with this other guy, she's about to face some serious repercussions. He explained that we'd secure child support and alimony, and I'd be able to keep the house, which she'd have to keep paying for as long as the girls live there. He even mentioned we might be able to get some extra financial support since I've been out of the workforce for so long, which could help me go back to school or find a job later on. A few of you were right. He advised me not to get a job until after the divorce is finalized. Apparently, if I start working now, it could mess up a lot of things in the settlement. Then he asked if I wanted full custody of the kids. I told him I wouldn't mind my wife seeing them on weekends here and there, but I'd prefer to have them most of the time. The lawyer explained that, given her affair happened in our home, I got a strong case for full custody. Bringing a stranger into the house put our girls at risk, and it doesn't reflect well on her. So, I'm going for full custody, letting her have the girls only on weekends, maybe once or twice a month. No man will be allowed around my daughters, and if I find out otherwise, there'll be consequences. The lawyer advised me to keep everything under wraps until the legal documents are ready. When the time comes, he'll arrange for someone to serve her with the divorce papers and an order to leave the house. He expects everything to be squared away by next week. It's tough to stay quiet, especially with how angry I am, but the lawyer was firm. He said I need to keep my cool until the divorce is final. After that, I can say whatever I want. For now, I have to act like everything's normal, no fighting, no drama, still sleeping in separate beds, and definitely no intimacy. I agreed, though I couldn't help but ask why. He told me to trust him and follow his advice without question. I just got back home and am about to make dinner, trying to keep things looking normal until she gets served next week. I can only share 2 updates here, so if you want more details, I'll post them on my page. The lawyer also suggested I get tested for STDs and take a paternity test for my daughters. When I asked why, he said it's rare, but sometimes these affairs aren't the first time something like this has happened. Hearing that really shook me. I've been feeling pretty down lately, and everything's been rough. Just to clear things up, I've talked to my lawyer about these posts. I didn't dive too deep into details, but they said it's okay to share as long as I keep things short and don't give too much away. So here's a quick update. I got tested for STDs, and thank God, everything came back negative. No surprises there, considering I haven't been intimate with her in over a year. Now, as for the paternity test, no matter what the result was, I'll always be their dad. That being said, I'm relieved to tell you that I'm definitely their biological father. It was a huge weight off my chest, even though I never thought I'd have to question it. Now, about my soon-to-be ex. She's no longer living in the house, and I've been granted full temporary custody of the girls. I'll fill you in on the specifics later, but for now, she's out. My lawyer handled the legal stuff to have her removed, and let's just say it wasn't a pleasant scene. I'll save that for another time. She got served with the divorce papers at her job, and from what I've heard, it didn't go down too well. Again, I'll share more details later. My daughters know something's up. My oldest is aware we're separating. One of her friends is parents who went through a similar situation, so she's seen the fallout and doesn't want us to split up. She's been crying and begging me to let her mom come back, and it's breaking my heart. I'm planning to get them set up with a child therapist, as per my lawyer's advice, to help them through all of this. My youngest just wants her mommy back and misses her terribly. It's tearing me apart, and I feel like a horrible father. I'm worried they'll grow to resent me for this. Sometimes I wonder if I should just let my wife keep cheating on me if it means keeping the family together and making my daughters happy. But I just can't go that route. Another thought that crossed my mind was maybe considering an open relationship, at least until the girls are older, but that's just not something I can stomach. I know my girls would sense the tension if their mom and I try to fake it, and they wouldn't be happy seeing us fall out of love. As for my soon-to-be ex, she's staying with her mom for now. My mother-in-law reached out and asked if we could meet, so I agreed. She didn't go into the specifics of what her daughter had done, but begged me not to take her granddaughters away from her. I reassured her that she's been a great grandmother, and as long as she keeps her daughter's issues separate from her relationship with the girls, she's welcome to be part of their lives. She thanked me, and that was the end of that conversation. Meanwhile, my ex has been calling and texting, trying to talk about us. But on my lawyer's advice, we set up a system where any communication is strictly limited to the girls and nothing else. Everything is tracked, no off-topic discussions, just about the kids, and that's it. Now for a quick update. I spent Thanksgiving with my soon-to-be ex and my mother-in-law. I did it solely for my daughters, and my lawyer knew it wasn't about patching things up. We cleared that up before the holiday. I had to sit down with my mother-in-law where we talked openly about how we'll handle things with my girls once the divorce is final. During the conversation, she let slip a few things about my soon-to-be ex that I never knew. Apparently, back in high school, she was cheated on by her boyfriend. I didn't even know she dated anyone back then. This guy's family had warned her to steer clear of him, and one night, she caught him getting cozy with another girl. My mother-in-law was shocked too. Then she mentioned that my ex had a few boyfriends during college, but she always knew none of them were serious. She told me that from the moment she met me, she thought she had found the perfect son-in-law. She's really disappointed in her daughter's choices now and promised me she wouldn't let any of this interfere with the divorce process. A few days before Thanksgiving, my mother-in-law invited me and the girls over for dinner. I asked if my soon-to-be ex would be there, and when she said yes, I told her I couldn't come if my ex was going to be around. She understood, but asked if we could put on a holiday act one more time for the girls' sake. She suggested I run it by my lawyer. After checking with him, the lawyer said it was okay as long as I made it clear to my ex, through our app, that it was strictly for the girls and nothing else. So, that's what I did. Earlier, my soon-to-be ex had been begging to see me and the girls themselves kept asking to see their mom. For their sake, I swallowed my pride, and we went over for dinner. From the moment we walked in, the whole thing felt awkward. My ex hugged the girls, which was fine, but then she tried to hug and kiss me. I sidestepped and hugged my mother-in-law instead. Throughout the evening, my ex acted like we were still a couple, trying to pull me into conversations. I kept my replies short, just simple yes or no answers while helping my mother-in-law with dinner and cleaning up afterward. When it was time to say grace, my ex sat next to me and reached for my hand, but I pulled away and just held my daughters instead. It might seem petty, but I can't stand her touching me anymore. I'm not a religious guy, but I went along with it out of respect for my mother-in-law. Dinner itself went smoothly, but my ex kept trying to talk like we were still a family, asking about Christmas and some vacation she wanted to take together. That's when it hit me, coming over was a mistake. After dinner, I cleaned up the dishes and got ready to leave, but my daughters wanted to watch a movie with their mom, something we used to do together. I agreed to stay, but when my ex tried to cuddle up next to me on the couch, I moved to a chair instead. My mother-in-law looked pretty upset with her daughter's behavior. You could see it on her face. She didn't approve at all. Once the movie ended, I started gathering the girls to leave, but they had fallen asleep. So I carried them to the car and went back inside to grab a few things we left behind. That's when my ex grabbed me, tears streaming down her face, begging to work things out and be a family again. Before I could even respond, my mother-in-law stormed over, grabbed her daughter by the hair, no joke, and yanked her away, telling me good night while she started yelling at her. I spoke with my lawyer afterward and told him everything that went down. I made it clear there's no chance of reconciliation, and that's been reflected in our messages. The lawyer assured me everything's on track. My ex keeps calling and begging to work things out, but I'm leaving her messages unread. The only thing I'll discuss is the girls, and I imagine we'll have the same routine for Christmas. I'm not sure if I can follow through with all of this or if it's even the right move, so I'll need to talk to my lawyer about it again. I'll keep it brief, but it's been really tough on my girls lately. They had 2 therapy sessions this week. The first one went well, and they seemed calmer and more at peace afterward. I had a chat with their therapist, who seems to really understand what my daughters need. But things took a rough turn during the second session. The therapist explained to them in a way they could understand that their mom had cheated on me and had an affair. I knew they'd have to face the truth one day, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon. When I picked the girls up after the session, they broke down in tears, clinging to me and telling me how much they loved me. Hearing that kind of love from them was heartwarming, but this was not the way I wanted them to find out about the separation. I asked the therapist why she told them, and she explained that the girls were already aware of the split and had picked up on the way I was treating their mother, how I wasn't affectionate with her anymore, and the tension in the house. She said kids aren't blind to these things, and they needed to know why we were separating so they could process it. She tried to handle it delicately, but she felt it was important for their progress in therapy to be honest with them. I won't get into all the details, but the therapist made sure the explanation was appropriate for their age. They now understand, in their own way, that their mom was unfaithful. My oldest is handling it better, but my youngest is having a really hard time. When we got home, they both clung to me and cried all night. I ordered some takeout, put on their favorite movies, and we camped out in my bedroom until they eventually fell asleep. Once they were out, I slipped into the bathroom and broke down myself. My soon-to-be ex doesn't even realize how much pain she's causing our daughters, and I'm at a loss for how to deal with it. The therapist suggested we consider medication to help them cope, but I refused. I don't want to put my girls on meds. The therapist understood and said it was just an option, but we'd need to consult their primary doctor if we ever considered it. I'd rather help them work through their emotions in a healthy, natural way. As for Christmas, my girls have some pretty strong feelings about their mom right now. I was shocked when my oldest said she never wants to see her mom again. Even my youngest echoed the sentiment, probably just following her big sister's lead. It took me by surprise. I tried to explain that while they may be upset, they shouldn't hate her. I told them their mom still loves them, but my oldest wasn't having it. They cried themselves to sleep in my arms. I know it sounds like something out of a bad drama, but I want to clarify. The girls are doing better now. They're still seeing the same therapist, and they're making progress, slowly coming to terms with everything. They don't hate their mom anymore, but they've both said they don't want to see her for a while. Those are their words, not mine. We'll have to see how that unfolds. I did let my wife know that the girls are aware of her affair, and she tried to call them. They answered, but since then, she's been more respectful of our boundaries. I think she's starting to realize what's happening. As for the guy involved in the affair, I always knew he was a loser, but I didn't realize just how low he really was. Someone asked me if there was anyone else in the picture, so I went through some of my wife's work documents and found a list of employee contacts. I called one of the numbers, and it turned out to be his wife. She had no idea what was going on. At first, she didn't believe me and hung up, but later she called back and asked to meet up. We met, and I showed her all the evidence. The moment we got into my car and closed the doors, she broke down in tears, asking me how they could do this to her and what she had done wrong. I reassured her that none of this was her fault and gave her my lawyer's number. She then asked how long it had been going on, and I told her it had been about a year, maybe a little longer. That's when her sadness turned into anger. I asked why she was so mad, and that's when she told me her story. Her wig, which I hadn't given much thought to before, was because she had just beaten cancer after their child was born. While she was in the hospital, she'd noticed some odd behavior from him, and that's when they found her tumor. Over the last year and a half, she had gone through 2 surgeries, chemotherapy, and was still on medication. Despite everything, she looked great, which surprised me. She told me she had beaten cancer and was feeling much better now, but she and her husband hadn't been intimate for almost 2 years. Between the pregnancy and the cancer treatment, she was in no shape for intimacy. She'd gotten very sick during the pregnancy, and the illness had taken a huge toll on her. After starting to feel better, she struggled with her self-image. The medication had caused weight gain, and losing her hair made her feel less attractive. She had been hoping to surprise her husband by finally feeling ready for intimacy, but those plans were crushed when she found out about the affair. She broke down, crying about the thought of her child growing up in a broken home, and I did my best to comfort her. When she tried to get a little closer, I gently turned her down, telling her that neither of us was in the right mindset for that, and it wouldn't be healthy for either of us. She appreciated my honesty. Later, she asked for all the evidence, so I gave her everything before she headed home. Since then, we've exchanged a few texts, trying to support each other as we both navigate this tough situation. So, for those of you who suggested reaching out to the other betrayed spouse, thank you. It's been a helpful connection. Update 2. Hey everyone. Just wanted to let you know how Christmas went with the other betrayed spouse. All things considered, it turned out to be a really nice day. I had set up a bunch of presents from Santa for my girls, knowing this might be the last year my oldest still believes in Santa, so I wanted it to be special. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, I laid out all the gifts. Within 15 minutes of waking up, the girls were full of excitement, running around the house, saying Santa had come. I dragged myself out of bed, and they tore into their presents, their faces lighting up with joy. After that, we snuggled up on the couch to watch a movie, and they eventually dozed off next to me. Once they were asleep, I got up to make some coffee, and when my youngest woke up, she told me she was hungry. So, I let her help me make breakfast while she wore an apron, which she loved. My oldest woke up, too, and we had a nice meal together. They spent the rest of the day playing with their new toys, and I couldn't help but feel happy seeing them so content. Later that evening, I got them ready to go see their mom and grandma. Normally, I'm a bit stricter about getting them prepared, but with everything going on, I've been a little more relaxed. The girls weren't exactly thrilled about seeing their mom, but I reminded them that she loves them, even if things between us are different now. My therapist had advised me to encourage their relationship with their mom for their own well-being. Otherwise, my wife could try to argue in court that I was isolating them from her. The therapist reassured me that the girls can choose how they want their relationship with their mother to be when they're older. My wife knows about the therapist's involvement, and they've spoken. The therapist made it clear to my wife that she had betrayed me and that the girls obviously favored me, meaning she'd have to work hard to regain their trust and love. I also reminded the girls not to hold anything against their grandma just because of their mom's actions. They understood and agreed to go. I dropped them off at their grandmother's house, and things went smoothly. My mother-in-law came out to collect their bags for the overnight stay. I had already confirmed with my lawyer that this arrangement was fine as long as it didn't become a regular thing. Before leaving, I made sure the girls knew they could call me anytime if they wanted to come home, and I'd be there in a heartbeat. As I was driving off, my soon-to-be ex-wife stepped outside. I couldn't hear what was being said, but judging by my mother-in-law's stern face, it looked like she was giving my ex a serious talking to. My ex looked at me with tears in her eyes and waved as I left. I had kept some food warm in the oven for the other betrayed spouse, and she eventually arrived without her toddler. When I asked where the little one was, she explained that her in-laws wanted to spend Christmas with the toddler and his father. She'd arranged everything through the lawyers, so it was all taken care of. She looked beautiful, wearing a nice dress, leggings, fluffy boots, and a lovely wig. We sat down for dinner, chatting about our lives, getting to know each other better. After dinner, we moved to the couch to watch a movie, but we ended up talking even more. I decided to open a bottle of wine. There's a specific kind I enjoy during Christmas, even though I don't drink much. She asked if she could have some, so I made sure she was okay with it before pouring her a glass. At first, we kept things light, but eventually, the conversation shifted to the struggles we were both dealing with, and a few tears were shed. To my surprise, as we kept talking and drinking, the mood lightened, and before I knew it, we were laughing, which doesn't happen much for me these days. We ended up going through 2 bottles of wine, which is pretty unusual for me. As the night went on, the conversation got more personal. We started talking about our desires and what we felt we'd been missing in our relationships. It struck me how much we had in common, and I pointed out how lucky our unfaithful spouses were to have us, despite everything they'd done. Some folks had suggested I compliment her appearance after her last attempt to get my attention, but I didn't think that was the right move. Instead, I told her that if the wig was uncomfortable, she could take it off because she looked beautiful with or without it. She hesitated, but eventually took it off, tears in her eyes as she thanked me. That moment felt like we really connected on a deeper level. As the night went on, we ended up cuddling on the couch while watching the movie. Just a heads up, we were both a bit tipsy. Back when I used to cuddle with my wife, she always liked it when I gently rubbed her chest, not in an aggressive way, just a soft, comforting touch. Without thinking, I found myself doing the same thing, out of habit. When she mentioned it felt good, I was caught off guard and immediately stopped, apologizing, realizing what I was doing. She reassured me it was fine and even asked me to keep going because it helped her relax. I double-checked to make sure she was really okay with it. And when she said yes, I resumed. I'll admit, it did turn me on a little, and she noticed. She started rubbing me back, and I quickly said, "Whoops, sorry." She asked if I wanted her to stop, but I told her she didn't have to if she didn't want to, and she insisted that she wanted to continue. So, for a few minutes, we shared that moment of intimacy, which naturally led to kissing and getting closer. Things escalated from there. She unzipped my pants and gave me oral. This was something we had previously discussed in a consensual way, so I encouraged her to keep going. That sparked a pretty intense and passionate series of moments around the living room, kitchen, and even the office before we finally ended up in my bed. There, things slowed down, and we enjoyed a more tender kind of intimacy, filled with kissing and softer moments. Afterward, we cuddled together, both of us shedding a few tears before falling asleep. The next morning, we had breakfast and even showered together. I couldn't help but ask if she had planned the whole night, and she laughed, saying, "A girl always keeps an extra set of clothes handy." Before she left, she asked if I had felt anything from what happened. I was honest and told her yes, I did. We both agreed, though, that it was important to be careful and make sure what we were feeling was real and not just a reaction to everything going on. She promised we'd explore those feelings later, kiss me on the cheek, and thank me for the wonderful night, saying she'd text me later. When I picked up my girls, they told me they had a good time with their mom. They mentioned that she was on her best behavior for the most part. Now, I've just finished preparing dinner and am looking forward to spending the evening with them. I know it's been a couple of months since my last update, but life has been pretty hectic. I get that some of you might think this sounds made up. Reddit's full of drama, after all. But this is my real life. Anyway, my girls are doing much better these days, thanks to therapy and keeping busy with activities. They still have their tough moments, but overall, they're improving. As for me and the other betrayed spouse, we still talk almost every day, but we haven't been physically intimate since that night. We did meet up once afterward and both agreed that while we didn't regret what happened, it probably shouldn't have happened at all. Now, about my soon-to-be ex. For a few weeks after Christmas, she kept trying hard to start conversations with me, but that has mostly stopped. She's finally hired a lawyer, and mine is in the loop. We'll be meeting soon, and I think she's finally understanding that I'm serious about this divorce, that there's no turning back. While she still sends me the occasional text or call trying to get me to reconsider, I've been leaving her messages unread. As for the other betrayed spouse's ex, he's been arrested. I won't go into too many details right now, but apparently he confronted my soon-to-be ex at her workplace, which led to a big argument. When she threatened to call the cops, he physically assaulted her. Some of the employees intervened and restrained him until the police arrived to arrest him. My ex is pressing charges against him, though I'm not sure if he's planning to involve a lawyer in their affair. I haven't heard anything about that yet. My mother-in-law told me all this and mentioned that I could visit my wife if I wanted to. Apparently, he gave her a black eye and busted her lip, but my mother-in-law sees it as karma catching up with her. I haven't seen my ex since the incident, nor have the girls, and unless something drastic happens, you probably won't hear from me until after our first meeting with the lawyers. Quick update. Hey everyone, a lot has been going on and life has been pretty crazy, but I wanted to give you all a quick update. Let's start with my girls. They were doing well and making good progress, but now that the divorce date is getting closer and they're realizing it's actually happening, things have gotten harder for them. Their therapist says they've accepted the situation, but they have been holding out hope that we might somehow reconcile. The reality of the divorce is starting to hit them hard. My youngest is coping fairly well, but I'm really worried about my oldest. My oldest daughter is feeling really down, and it's starting to worry me. I'm following the therapist's advice and taking all the necessary steps to help her, but the therapist has brought up the possibility of medication, and I'm hesitant. Still, it may come to a point where that's the only option. She's usually a healthy kid, but I've noticed her clothes are starting to fit poorly, and I think she's been eating less. I've talked to her doctor about adding more nutritious options to her meals to help her gain some weight. I really hope we can figure this out before it becomes a bigger issue. It's hard not to feel like I'm failing as a father. I never wanted my daughter to go through anything like this. If you're religious, I'd appreciate any prayers for my daughters. On another note, the other betrayed spouse and I are still in contact every day. We're getting along well, and things are slowly becoming easier. But she hit me with some bad news. My soon-to-be ex's lover has skipped town. I'm not surprised. He took off shortly after getting bailed out for assaulting her. It turns out my ex was the last person to have contact with him. She had been planning to press charges, but he threatened to sue her, claiming she used her position and influence at work to start the affair. In the end, she dropped the charges, and he didn't pursue the lawsuit. Instead, he just disappeared. No one knows where he is, and his parents claim they don't know either. Do I believe them? Not really, but I have no proof otherwise. Now, about our meeting with the lawyers, it went surprisingly smoothly. My lawyer laid out my demands, especially pushing for full custody after what happened with her lover. But her lawyer seemed to ignore most of it and kept pushing the idea that we should reconcile for the sake of the kids. My lawyer wasn't having any of it. He reminded them of everything my ex had done and made it clear that reconciliation was not on the table. Even after that, her lawyer kept pushing for it, but my lawyer just smiled and said, "Very well, we'll see you in court." 2 weeks later, my lawyer called with some good news. My soon-to-be ex had agreed to most of the terms. The only thing she pushed back on was having the girls every weekend. Instead, we settled on 2 weekends a month with alternating holidays. At first, she wanted every weekend, but my lawyer negotiated that down. I agreed to the terms because, at the end of the day, she's still their mother. I hope, after everything that's happened, she's learned to put the girls first. It's tough seeing her like this. My soon-to-be ex looks awful, almost anorexic, like she's aged 10 years in the last few months. She's even losing her hair. Even though I don't have the same feelings for her anymore, she's still the mother of my daughters, and I don't want to see her fall apart. I asked my mother-in-law to step in and help her out, but at first, she said it was her punishment. I had to remind her that she's still her daughter and the mother of my granddaughters. She needs support, so my mother-in-law has agreed to help get her back on track. My soon-to-be ex left me a note asking if we could meet in person one last time before the divorce is finalized, just to talk things over. I agreed, but the meeting will be recorded and held in a public place. We're still technically married, but the divorce will be finalized in the first week of July. Just a few more weeks, and it'll all be over. Hey everyone, sorry I haven't updated in a while. Life's been pretty hectic, especially with 2 active young girls running around during the summer. Let me catch you up on a few things before I talk about my meeting with my soon-to-be ex. Despite my initial reservations, we've decided to put my oldest daughter on a low-dose medication for a while. I discussed it with her doctor, her therapist, and my soon-to-be ex, and we all agreed it was the best option for now. She'll be on the lowest dosage possible, and once things stabilize, we'll gradually reduce the medication. My youngest daughter seems to be doing well, with no major issues. She wishes we could all live together again, but she understands why we can't. She's pretty sharp for her age. As for the other betrayed spouse's ex, he has completely vanished. No one knows where he's gone, and the other betrayed spouse and I still talk every day. Now, for the part you've been waiting for, my meeting with my soon-to-be ex. We met at the park, the one we used to take the girls to. I recorded everything, just in case, but fortunately, she didn't try anything. Most of our conversation revolved around the girls. She actually agreed that it's best for them to stay with me full-time while we go through the separation. She admitted she's not in the right headspace to be a mom right now and acknowledged that she had let them down. I won't bore you with all the details since most of it was about the girls, but as I was about to leave, she asked one final question. She wanted to know if there was any chance we could stop the divorce, go to counseling, and try to fix our relationship. I looked her straight in the eye and told her flat out no. Here's the reworked version of the next part. I reminded her of everything she had said and done, how she let that guy disrespect me, and how she was aware of what he did to his own wife and child. I even brought up how she put our girls through all of this. There was no way I could ever trust her again or even think about giving our relationship another chance after everything that happened. So, I asked her straight up if she really believed she deserved a second chance. She admitted she didn't. At that moment, I was fired up. I started telling her how much I had loved her, how I gave up my career for her and our daughters, and everything I did to make her happy. She started to cry, but I eventually just stopped talking. When she apologized, I told her that sorry didn't mean anything to me anymore. Then, for some reason, I asked her what had been going through her mind when she started the affair. I don't know if anyone else mentioned it, but someone had sent me a YouTube video where a guy read my story, and people were discussing it. I skimmed through the comments, and some of them really hit home. Out of nowhere, she blurted, "I wanted to be the one at home." I was confused, and then she just started spilling everything. She confessed that she never wanted to run her dad's business. She had always wanted me to take it over. She didn't want to be working long hours. She wanted to be a mom and a wife. She kept going for about 30 minutes, explaining how she had pictured herself as a homemaker, making meals, taking care of our girls, and living that role. She admitted that she never wanted the burden of owning and running a business. When she was done talking, she looked like she was about to pass out. I asked her why. If that was the case, she made me quit my job. She said she had hoped I would push to take over the business. I reminded her that it wasn't my business, and I had zero experience running something like that. It wouldn't have been fair to step into her father's business without any knowledge of the field. Then I asked why she never just told me she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. She admitted she wanted me to say it first because she was too proud to admit it herself. That's when I lost it. I told her that all of this was because of her ridiculous pride. I wouldn't have cared if she had been honest about wanting to stay home. I would have supported her. I was so angry, and honestly, I still am. Then I asked how all of this tied into the affair. She said that during the pandemic, when she was working so many hours, she started feeling jealous and angry watching me at home with the girls. Apparently, the other guy noticed and started making cruel comments about me, saying if I were a real man, she could be the one staying at home. That's how the affair started. She claimed she tried to end it at one point, but he manipulated her by insulting me and feeding her jealousy, making her believe she could have a better life without me. This toxic cycle pulled her back to him again and again, and it made her bitter and cruel toward me. She said the whole mess could have been avoided if she had just communicated better from the start. In the end, she told me all she wanted was to have her family back and for things to go back to normal. I was devastated and furious. I couldn't stay there any longer, so I got up and left. Since then, I've been carrying a lot of anger inside, feeling so bitter about everything that happened. Oh, and there's one more thing I almost forgot to mention. Late last year, she got pregnant with the other guy's child. She ended up having a termination and didn't tell anyone. My mother-in-law noticed she was acting strange, but thought it was just her trying to get attention. Turns out, she was really struggling with what happened.